The Palestinian foreign minister expresses shock at Europe's inaction over Israel's conduct, urging stronger accountability from EU leaders.
Russian overnight strikes hit Ukraine following a 50-day peace deal ultimatum Trump gave to Putin on Monday. The European Commission will send a letter to the executive in Tbilisi threatening to suspend the visa liberalization regime.
The Palestinian foreign minister was appalled at Europe's inability to take action against Israel, despite a recent EU report stating Tel Aviv is in breach of human rights obligations.
Shocking and disappointing, because everything is crystal clear. I mean, there's a EU report that clearly stated that Israel has been violating 38 violations were indicated in that report. And it's an EU report. And yet, there was a failure on agreeing to take actual measures. And these measures are very important because to deter wrongdoing, you need to take measures.
Talking to Euronews, Varsan Shaheen also denounced that the agreement between Europe and Israel for the resumption of humanitarian aid in Gaza is not working.
If we look at the last week, since the agreement was made, we see more killings of people. We see people killed at the queuing points. We see children brutally murdered while in tents awaiting medical care from another tent. So these are the kinds of questions that need to be asked today and asked in a very serious manner.
When asked about the report saying that Hamas was profiting from humanitarian aid, the minister did not deny it, defending the previous humanitarian distribution system.
Look, there are conflicting reports on this. But regardless, whatever is being offered in Gaza is not meeting the needs of the Gazans. There was a modality in the past, and that modality was working because the international organizations were distributing the aid, and they had like 300 points of distribution. Today we have a new modality with 4 points of distribution. Invariably, you will have crowds, massive numbers of people queuing to get food. And under such circumstances, you are putting people in a risk of harm.
You can catch the full interview on Euronews.
I think all countries...
A severe heat wave is gripping the Gaza Strip, compounding the humanitarian crisis for more than 1.7 million displaced Palestinians. Medical workers say soaring temperatures are worsening the conditions of patients sheltering in overcrowded tent camps, where access to treatment is limited. The situation is particularly dire for thousands of people requiring ongoing care for burns and other serious injuries.
بسبب الصيف يعني بسبب الشوب قلت أنا لو في السقعة أنا بتألمش في الليل باخذ علاجي وبنام اليوم أنا بدي علاج أقوى وجرعة أكتر ما فيش في السوق ما فيش في
Doctors say survival rates are falling as they struggle with limited medical supplies.
يعني كل شوية بدي أمزق الجلد عشان أنا بس أقدر إني أحك إني أريحها شوية من الوجع اللي أنا بعيشه وموت وشوب كتير مش طبيعي عندي أنا في الخيمة. هو برضه أنت شايف هاي خيمتي يعني مش اللي أنت شايفها.
Medical staff say the heat is hampering recovery for many patients, particularly those with burn injuries, which would require months of care under proper clinical conditions.
تأخر التئام الحروق بسبب إنه أول شيء بتزيد درجة الحرق مع الحرارة، إحنا طبعاً بنوصيهم إنهم يبعدوا قدر الإمكان عن الأشياء مصادر الحرارة، لكن في وضع الخيام صعب الواحد يبعد عن الحرارة. ثاني شغلة إنه الحرارة بتزيد الرطوبة والعرق، كمان هذا بتخليه وسط ملائم لنمو البكتيريا.
After nearly 3 months of a blockade, Israel began allowing limited aid to enter Gaza in May.
A leader of Syria's Druze religious minority has accused the government of violating a ceasefire announced after sectarian clashes killed dozens in the country's southern Sweda province. It comes after government security forces that were deployed to Sweda's provincial capital on Monday to restore order also clashed with Druze armed groups. The clashes began over the weekend with tit-for-tat kidnappings and attacks between members of local Sunni Bedouin tribes and Druze armed factions. In the early hours of Tuesday, the Druze spiritual leadership called for armed factions that have been clashing with government forces to surrender their weapons and cooperate with authorities as they entered the city. But an influential Druze leader who has been opposed to the new government in Damascus later said the statement had been imposed on them, adding that government forces continued their attacks. Meanwhile, neighboring Israel also launched new strikes in the area. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz said in a statement the strikes were aimed at protecting the Druze minority. While many Druze in Syria have said they do not want Israel to intervene on their behalf, factions from the minority have also been suspicious of the new authorities in Damascus. Russian forces launched drone attacks across several regions in Ukraine overnight into Tuesday, bringing the death toll since Sunday to 5, according to regional authorities. In Dnipro, an apartment building, 6 houses and a school were damaged by drone debris, but no injuries were reported. 2 people were injured during Russian strikes in Zaporizhia, according to the regional governor, and a fire also broke out on the roof of a multi-story residential building. The Ukrainian regions of Kharkiv and Sumy were also targeted by Russian strikes, killing at least 1 woman, regional authorities reported. 12 people were injured in the attacks on Sumy, including 5 staff members and a student at a university that was hit. The attacks come a day after U.S. President Donald Trump issued a 50-day ultimatum to Russian President Vladimir Putin to reach a peace deal or face what he called severe economic sanctions. While some believe strict tariffs on Moscow would be a game-changer, the postponement until September struck others as being too long. Russia is making a summer push to break through the 1,000-kilometer front line, and its drones and missiles are hammering Ukrainian cities more than at any time in the past 3 years.
German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius was greeted with an honor cordon before holding bilateral talks with U.S. Secretary of State Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon on Monday. The meeting between both defense chiefs is expected to, among other things, conclude plans for the transfer of 2 Patriot missile systems to Ukraine. Hegseth and Pistorius both lauded their country's cooperation.
I think we've seen incredible progress inside NATO, and with Germany taking the lead on that. Upfront commitment to your spending, commitment to European leadership, and so I want to commend you and thank you for that.
Let me assure you once more, Germany will continue to play a strong role and a reliable role in the alliance. We are firmly committed to fair burden sharing and to building a more capable, more reliable, more resilient Europe within NATO.
The meeting came after U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday announced his intention to sell Patriot weapon systems for Ukraine to European allies, including Germany. Germany has already donated 3 of its own Patriot units to Kyiv, retaining 9 systems. The U.S. government on Monday said it won't publish a climate change report on the NASA website despite a promise to do so in what is the latest step from the Trump administration in removing information about climate change on federal sites. Earlier this month, the official government websites that hosted the authoritative peer-reviewed national climate assessments went dark. Such sites tell state and local governments and the public what to expect in their backyards from a warming world and how best to adapt to it. At the time, the White House said NASA would house the reports to comply with a 1990 law that requires the reports, which the space agency said it planned to do. But on Monday, NASA announced that it aborted those plans. The most recent report issued in 2023 found that climate change is affecting people's security, health, and livelihoods in every corner of the country in different ways, with minority communities, particularly Native Americans, often disproportionately at risk.
The EU is escalating its compelling approach with the Georgian government. The European Commission will send a letter to the executive in Tbilisi threatening to suspend the visa liberalization regime by August 31st. The union is demanding that Georgia curbs what the EU institutions call the backsliding of democratic principles. This potential restriction was announced this Tuesday at the EU Foreign Affairs Council in Brussels.
So far, we have kept this position that we don't want to hurt Georgian people, and taking away the visa-free regime is really having an impact on them. But at the same time, it's also an issue of credibility of the European Union.
According to Georgian Dream, the current ruling party, the EU seeks to influence and scare the Georgian public opinion in view of the municipal elections scheduled for next October.
რაც რუსეთ-უკრაინის ომი გაჩაღდა, საქართველოს არ დაემორჩილა მათ მოთხოვნებს, არ მიუერთა სანქციებს, არ მიეცით შესაძლებლობა მეორე ფრონტის გახსნის ქვეყანაში. ოქტომბრის არჩევნებში, საპარლამენტო არჩევნებში ისინი დამარცხდნენ.
The potential visa suspension measures divided the EU foreign ministers. Some of them are afraid that it could backfire against the EU since 80% of the Georgian public opinion is pro-European.
We think that restrictions should be put on those who are responsible for repression and not on the people of Georgia.
Last autumn's elections sparked a wave of more than 6 months of anti-government protests in Georgia. The EU is highly concerned by the wave of detentions carried out by the Georgian authorities against journalists and some members of the opposition. At least 7 opposition figures were arrested by the authorities in recent months.